All right, we're getting back after this air intake project. This is a common SLP Blackwing filter, often referred to as a hot air intake. But anyways, what I would like to try and do, if I can, is keep this guy in the center. Only problem is I knew this wasn't 4 inches, but I didn't realize it was 3.5 either. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stretch that guy over 3.5. I would like to see if I can get it opened up to 4 inches. But we'll try a hair dryer or a heat gun. 92 millimeter throttle body is 4 inches. So we're going to try and go 90. It's either 45 or 30. I can't remember what angle this is. And then I think it's the 30 that will point it down into the filter. This is the 4-inch Airaid Build It Yourself air intake kit. Obviously it comes with two 90s, 45, I think another 45 and a 30. What I'm going to try and do is cut this guy here and here, and then we're going to use this to get from the throttle body over to the radiator. I'll have to cut it in the middle so that that can be flipped around, and it's probably going to have 3 or 4 couplers in it by the time it's done to get down to the filter. Not quite sure how to cut this yet. I'm torn between just using my 90-degree air motor with a regular cutoff disc, which is kind of messy. I may try and cut it with a hacksaw in between the two beads. I don't know if I can keep it straight, but I'm going to go ahead and get this cut, and then we'll set it up on the car. Make sure that this is a good length that we can just cut it in the middle. Okay, so I tried the hacksaw, and it's okay. It's a little bit more difficult than I would like to try and keep in the center of those two beads. This is still more than salvageable. I got real close to the edge on that bead right there, but there is still a little bead on there. I don't really care about the bead because there's no boost in this pipe, so I'm probably being a little bit too picky, but I am going to go ahead and try in a standard abrasive cutoff disc and see how we like that. So here's what we got so far. 90. I think this is a 45. These are Amazon couplers. I think they're the, what is it, Scepter or Spectre, whatever the heck the name is. I've seen the name before. Spectre. So that's what I'm looking at now. So the filter's not stood up all the way. It sits more like that. So I'm thinking about trying to see if I can cut this piece out of here to get this little turn down to tip down into that filter. I'm going to investigate a little bit more. Well, we've succeeded in making a giant ass mess in the garage. This is where we're at. Had to make a second one of these. The first one was, just figuring things out and wound up a little bit short. I could have made it work, but I'm like, hey, you got a second one of these, so don't settle for mediocrity. I don't know if I can do all this with, I don't know if I can do this with one hand or not, but we got this fitting really nice. Tried to set it up so there's about 1/8 of an inch gap in between the any of the joints. It really does fit pretty good, but I can't hold all this stuff together with one hand, but you get the idea. So we're going to end up with 3 couplers in there. I was able to get this 4-inch tube inside of this 3.5-inch air cleaner. Took almost 40 minutes, and there was a very lot of swearing. There was absolutely no point in filming any of that part, but let me get all these couplers set up and we'll take a gander at the finished product. Well, we got it done, and I'm happy with the way it turned out. There's a few mistakes that I may have made, as far as choices, but the product itself, this Airaid Build It Yourself intake kit, it's a very quality piece. I would recommend it to anybody that had a custom application that they needed done. Couple things to note, they've got these beads molded in lots of different places from the way it's delivered. These aren't always going to line up with what you got going on, so don't fret that. It's not like you got boost going through this pipe and it needs to be held on there super tight. So, some of those I have a bead where it's lined up underneath the coupler, and then I don't know, there's like, this one doesn't have a bead, this one doesn't have a bead, so, but I'm not worried about it going anywhere. In my installation, looking back on it, I kind of wish I would have bought the 3.5-inch kit instead of the 4-inch kit, and then used this step down coupler that I had. This doesn't need to be so bulky for this installation, and it's really going to make trying to cram a hood on here even worse. If I would have done the 3.5-inch Airaid kit, I wouldn't have had to stretch that intake out, or the filter, I mean. But anyways, it is what it is at this point. I'm not starting over for now. But I really wanted to use the Blackwing filter because it has a tremendous amount of surface area, no restriction. But yeah, when I get to monkeying around with the hood for this thing, I may end up having to come up with a plan B or C or D or E somewhere in there. This is some of the pieces that I had left. This was the original 90 that I made, and this ended up being too short. I had to put another 1/2 inch onto that guy. Ultimately, I found cutting this stuff at home, I ended up using just a plain old hacksaw and trying to keep it kind of locked down in a vise so that it didn't squirm all over the place. And then to clean up the edges, I used aluminum oxide flat disc on my angle grinder, and you can really true those edges up and smooth them out real nice. I use a knife at a 90-degree angle to get all the burrs out of the inside of the pipe, and it works great. I will say, if I was at work and I had a shop environment to work out of, I'd be using a bandsaw and a 12-inch disc sander, and I would have had this whole damn job done in probably less than half the time of fighting it without having good shop tools. But I'm not complaining. It's just a little more tedious and harder to do in a garage setting if you don't have those fancy tools. That's about all I can say about the 4-inch Airaid Build Your Own intake kit. I like it. So hopefully this gives some others some ideas on what they can build for their car or truck.